what excites you like on the horizon? Where do you see yourself in a few years, et cetera? Those kind of what about the future kind of question. And I know things are so dynamic and changing, but um, sounds like you're in a great space now. What other spaces do you find yourself attracted to?
Yeah, so I do see myself because well, I'm now in Silicon Valley and been in the kind of like immersed in the center of the innovation or one of the key um, entrepreneurship ecosystems in the world. I do feel there are still a lot of things that I can make impact on. So one example is, I think we talk about that, is if you look at the even just Silicon Valley ecosystem, I think the stat from Forbes or maybe another media is only 2% of capital went into women-founded startups. So that really speaks the problem because like
2%.
if you look at the whole, only 2%
Wow.
of capital of the overall invested capital went into women-founded startups.
Hmm.
But common sense, you don't think there are only 2% of women who are founding startups, but then why only 2% of the capital went in there? I feel there's systematic problem there. And one potential, I think, reason for that is also for the VC ecosystem, there are less women investors. And I read a blog before about how women founders present, the dynamics and the style and the communication, the ways of communication differ between female founders and male founders, and how differently it was received by, say, a female investor and a male investor. So I think one of my missions there is still to grow, the both the female investor and the female founder community. There's already existing organizations there in Silicon Valley and in other hubs or around the world. But I feel there's a lot of things to do, that we should push forward the conversation and push forward the change. And the second mission that I have, and I really feel that's the place I can make an impact on, is bridging between where the capital sits and where the capital is most needed. And by that, I mean, so just think about, for example, a startup that's located in Silicon Valley, just that fact alone would make that startup valued maybe multiple times higher than a similar startup located, say, I don't know, Eastern Europe, Africa, or even Japan. So, you also see a discrepancy there. It doesn't mean it's not, of course, people in Silicon Valley are brilliant or smart, very, very driven founders, but there are also equally talented founders and equally very great startups other part of the world. But why, only there's like this, location driven, seems like location driven valuation, I don't know, metrics. So I really felt there could be a lot of dialogues and a lot of collaborations to be done across geographies, in terms of how and where capital flow from and where capital flow into. And sometimes I feel like it's just limited. It's not because capital doesn't know if that's a great startup or not, but sometimes it's also limited by investors' personal experiences and how they perceive the world outside. Just to give you another example, for example, a lot of startups in the US, when they think about expansion, and they naturally would think, oh, let's go to Europe, because English, it's, makes a lower language barrier and feel like they share similar culture. But I feel it's language barrier alone. It's over at sometimes it's an overestimated factor in terms of assessing the overall opportunity. But for example, well, Japan, people would think, oh, Japan is a very, like high language barrier and in the ecosystem and how people do business, very, very different. That's true. But on the other hand, don't forget about Japan has a very huge market, and Japanese consumers are very prone to technology changes that's happening in the US. For example, like Amazon actually chose Japan as one of its first target markets to enter in its early days. So there could be I just feel a lot of education that could happen, and a lot of dialogues could have done to change people's perception. And that's where, I feel I can step in by bridging the gaps in between and tell people of the other different sides, like what's the story on the other side, and eventually lead, let the dialogues flow, and then eventually the capital will also follow. So I think this is another mission that I have, and I hope that makes sense. But I really feel this is also critical mission and critical purpose that I really want to make a change on.
This is great, May. It seems to me like you should put these two visions together and become a female founder to make this global investment thing happen. It's a great vision.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's not just about vision, but about execution. Right. And back to our earlier topic, is small steps by small steps, and then hopefully one day they'll all be connected together.
That's awesome. Well, this has been really helpful. And if someone wanted to, I know you don't want to get inundated because you're working full time, but if someone watching this video got inspired, and they wanted to learn more about Colombia or making the transition into VC or impact investment, how would you like to be contacted, or how would you like someone to reach out? What's the best way to find you if you want to be found?
I would say the best way is through my email. You have that, which is my Gmail. So feel free to drop me email. I may not be like super fast in terms of responding because of all the emails, communications that I have, but I would definitely try to be helpful, because I've been there, and as I mentioned earlier, I've also begged a lot of people to talk to me when I was an MBA applicant. So I really want to give back, and I know how impactful it could be by hearing the words people who have experience from there, and how motivated you could get by just hearing other people's stories. So so through my email.
Cool. Great. Any final last words or thoughts for today? I want to thank you a lot for your time.
I would say, I think maybe something I really want to get across is that maybe 2 points, if I can, just
Please.
just under the theme of MBA and how that changed my career and my life. I think the first point is, a lot of people think about MBA, even including myself before I joined MBA, you think about, oh, it's very fun. You meet a lot of people, you make a lot of friends, you travel around the world of, blah, blah, blah. But I think one caveat I really want everybody to at least know upfront is also the peer pressure. And you should really do your best to resist it. And don't underestimate the peer pressure in MBA, just think about it. You have like your social events on every Thursday or Friday night, and it's during the recruiting season, and all people around you are talking about, oh, I got the 3 offer from Goldman Sachs, from McKinsey, Google. I'm debating which one I should choose, and you had no offer, and you maybe even had no interview yet. That's the moment that you really, really, you felt just like struggle a lot and you wanted to quit. And it's like, no matter it's VC or other jobs, it's not that easy. And a lot of times it took longer than the standard or traditional recruiting process. So I've seen a lot of people got very anxious or are sometimes even depressed during that period of time, maybe for 1 or 2 or 3 months. But I would say stick to your original goal, stick to your original passion. And during that time, when you get, that tremendous peer pressure there, just first of all, just don't go to the social events. And then secondly, and just asking yourself, even just revert back to your essay, just assuming that's something that you really wanted to do, go back there and just ask yourself, what's my purpose of coming to MBA? Is that just want to look cool, be the smartest person in the room, or to achieve something that has longer impact in my life? Thinking long term, because at the end of the day, after 5-10 years, who will remember, oh, this person got his or her summer internship or full-time job 3 months earlier than everybody else? Well, it might look cool at that time, but life is long in some sense. So thinking long term, don't surrender yourself to peer pressure, because it can get tremendous at some point. And a lot of MBA people are very, A-type, very competitive. So sometimes it can really get can shake your determination. So don't give up to it. I think this is one. And second is I would say the power of belief. And I think from my personal experience, recruiting for a VC job in the States, it's already highly competitive industry. And plus that I'm international, and people say, yeah, well, you didn't like go to the same high school with all those, billionaire or the unicorn startup founders. How did you build your networks? Or you have the visa issue, it's super hard to find a sponsor, and on top of all those other challenges you have. So I got a lot of questions and a lot of doubts from my peers, from a lot of people. And there was time that I even doubted myself, like, did I choose the right path to pursue? And I think end of the day, the power of belief that I can do something. I didn't know concretely, well, I will be ended up in Silicon Valley for, my dream job in VC. But I just believe that by making progress, by really just doing small things, step by step, it will lead me somewhere. And even at that time, I told myself, even I could not get directly into VC right after MBA, but I can go here as a backup, and then after maybe 2-3 years, and then that will lead me eventually into VC. So I would say the power of belief, it's extremely important during recruiting, or I think even post MBA life, you have to believe what other people typically don't believe, and just keep going. So I know, it sounds very easy, but I really hope, just carry that on, and then you will achieve eventually what you dream for. Don't just give up to peer pressure. Don't give up to, whatever challenges that or setbacks you might be facing at that time in front of you, but think more in long term and really keep believing.
Awesome. Good message for our times in general, the last 18 months of life and everything else. It's great.
I hope so. Yeah. But this is something that I keep reminding myself too. So I wanted to share with everybody here.
Cool. Well, I'm sure people will really be inspired by what you've done and what you've said today. So appreciate your time and your sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Wing. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And I look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Take care.
All right.
All
Have a
right,
great day.
everyone.
Bye, Wing.
Bye-bye.